Good morning, traders. Thanks for joining me. It is 8:03 a.m. Chicago time on Tuesday, the 18th of October, 2022. This is episode number 2338. Thanks for joining me. Derivatives trading is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. So, what is the status here today? Today, another day, strong risk on sentiment given the overnight action. Pretty much everything is up 2% or better versus prior settlement. One thing I want to point out is that crude oil rolled based on yesterday's settlement. We're now trading CLZ2. So the price in crude that you're seeing now is for the front month of December, which is 93 cents cheaper than November. It's in backwardation. So I'm going to be, if you're part of Convergent, the stock zones, the flex levels, or the master levels, as well as the cloud notes, the cloud levels are all based on, 1 second, please. Hang on tight. Oof. Really forgot one crucial step that I need to fix. Way too much to do this morning, even though I got here at 6 a.m. Still, I ended up dropping a piece. I need like a pilot's checklist that is 16 pieces long. Yeah, that was a crucial error there. Did not update the Trader Byte page. Okay, cool. So very strong sentiment this morning. Really nothing special about the way this market's rallying right now. It is very technically driven. It is very technically driven. And a lot of the positive sentiment is really, a lot of the positive moves or the bull moves here, according to several sources. Again, I'm not an analyst, I'm a day trader. But many sources say that there's just such strong negative sentiment that, who's left. So you get these strong rallies. But earnings were expected to be quite poor. And so far, they've been pretty decent. Johnson & Johnson this morning beat by 1.19%. Albertsons beat by 10%, came in at 72 cents versus 65. Lockheed Martin beat by 2.84%. Goldman Sachs released today. They were expected at $7.71, came in at $8.25, beating by 7%. State Street came in at $1.82 versus $1.78 expected. So you can see the theme here is that earnings are relatively strong, and so the market's really catching a bid, and really it's been driven lower through very negative sentiment, and that's when you have mass psychology kind of pushing the other way. So that's really it. Earnings are in focus. Really slow news, not much news flow. Looking at the S&P, earnings, as I said, J&J, Albertsons, Lockheed Martin, Goldman Sachs, State Street. Pre-market, after the market today, we get United Airlines, American Mobile, Netflix, and JB Hunt are the key players after the close today. So we'll keep watching for what the earnings show. I want to make sure that you are voting here on our Polling for Charity Challenge, which is today and Thursday. We set up a poll. Hopefully it's not going to crash this time because of the number of connections. But please go ahead and vote. You can vote by going to eclear.me/event-voting. You'll be voting on today's selected prices. These are the selected prices. I go through and I look at where the market is, and I'm going to cover this. I'm going to close the trader bite here in about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to cover why I selected these prices and why I chose below versus above. You can vote on one or all of these. Please do vote. So go ahead and do that. We're based on the votes. We're going to put on live positions in the contract event contract markets this morning. So going back to the S&P, the S&P has traded 452,000 contracts, pretty heavy this morning relative to what we would consider to be normal, which is up to 340,000 contracts. So right there, the first clue we get is that the market is quite active. There's a lot of price discovery going on this morning. The inventory is 100% short. We're trading 100% of our volume has occurred above yesterday's settlement. And yesterday's, as you recall, we talked about it during yesterday's Trader Bite, that it was expected to be a sideways choppy day because we had that rally day, then we sold off on Friday, and so yesterday was expected to be balanced. The market is showing that it has tested both extremes and it's likely to balance out, and that's exactly what happened in yesterday's session. Pretty boring session. Another session where the IB stat is not fulfilled, which only occurs historically, on a historical basis, only occurs about 4% of days based on 2,500 sessions. That's 10 years of data. In general, that tells us that the historical probability of the IB high or low being breached, not touched, but breached, is around 96%. And yesterday fell into the 4% category. It gets thrown into the 4%, which is highly unusual. The overnight range is 69.5 points. Quite a bit of range in the overnight session. Pretty active session. There's a lot coming in from the UK Treasury market and what's going on over there, and the market's responding to a lot of that. Although you can see the European markets are not rallying as much as the U.S. markets. The Euro Stoxx 50 up only 1.77%. The DAX is up 1.96% versus the S&P, which is up 2.11%, and the NASDAQ up 2.38%. But still, the driver for this rally is coming out of Europe, out of the European session. We've spent most of the session above, and we have gapped above in the overnight session. We had gapped above yesterday's session, so that's quite bullish, right? So that's that. Looking at what has flowed out today, we got the zoo economic sentiment came in at negative 59.2, better than the negative 63.4. That was expected. So expecting negative 63.4, that's the zoo economic sentiment index for October, and came in better at negative 59.2. We're expecting industrial production out of the U.S., housing starts out of Canada. We're looking for the NAHB housing market index. This might or might not be a mover. That comes out at 10 o'clock. Then we get ECB Schnabel, ECB's Nagel at 12 and 1. And then we wrap up with the net tick flows, as well as the API crude oil stock change. Fed's Kashkari at 5:30 today. Let's look at the technicals here and move past this to the event contract polling. So here's yesterday. This is yesterday right here. And as discussed, this is just exactly, for those of you who were here yesterday might recall, this is exactly what was expected of yesterday's session. Really did not expect much more than this. It opened, ticked down, and it looked like an open drive, but ultimately became a completely sideways session. Very slim pickings yesterday, and it remained above the overnight. It opened at the edge of the overnight session, and it remained above. I did expect that we'd likely open and pull back, excuse me, we'd likely pull back at least a little bit yesterday down into 36.50, use that as a base for the rally, and then sideways. And what it did is it just opened and it just never looked back. It opened, left a string of singles or an excess at the low, and just went sideways from there. It did respect the RTH VWAP mid early on, then later the full session VWAP. But I got to tell you, I didn't see very much to do in there yesterday. So that's what we saw. Looking at the overnight session, you can see here we opened with a quick burst higher, and we have done nothing but hold this push, and we are now at the highs with a fair amount of activity. You can see this selling activity up here. Sell, 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 some size selling into this high. We are stretching our limits here a little bit already. So we need to consider that in our event contract vote. Let's see how many of you voted here for the event contracts. The link is pinned to the live chat here on YouTube, but again, the link to vote is eclear.me/event-voting. eclear.me/event-voting. Go and vote, please. So here's the bigger picture. So as I said, we gapped down last Friday. Boom. Tried lower, and then we had a big reversal day on Friday, following a massive gap in the overnight session. Low probability rally on Friday, but it did happen, a surprise to everybody. Finished near highs on a week high. Came in Monday, that was Thursday, on CPI. Came in Friday, we opened slightly higher, so we continued the rally up, which was expected on Friday morning. We expected with the week high on Thursday, the rally on Thursday, we expected that the auction is likely to continue to slide higher, and we gapped up on Friday, and then we became responsive on the Michigan sentiment and came right back into the middle of what is balance here. Okay, so that's where we left things on Friday. Friday we finished with a pretty weak close down here. So we found the low, we found the high. So what's expected for Monday is to be sandwiched in between, and that's what I talked about yesterday, and that's exactly what we got. We're sandwiched right in the middle of this balance. If you recall yesterday, I merged all of these profiles together to form one big fat profile, and we were right in the middle of that big fat profile, and we held steady in there. So no surprises yesterday, exactly what was expected. Here it is. So if we merge these profiles back now, because they're overlapping, merge with previous, and now you could see that there's quite a base here. Yesterday traded right on top of the point of control. If you recall, I talked yesterday about 36.96 being a key magnet, and that's basically where we were. The point of control yesterday was on top of settlement, which was about 36.90. So right in the vicinity of that, perfectly normal. Now what we've done today is special. What we've done in the overnight session is we've cleared this old gap that was here. We've cleared it, and we've moved into these 3 days from last week, from early last week. So now the magnet's 37.8650. That point of control up here becomes the next magnet. So today we're trading at 37.63. I'm expecting that we are likely to continue higher, but I'm looking for this thing to get weak by the close and to kind of fall to where it is now, most likely by the end of the day, which makes for a very interesting event contract trade this morning, in that we are likely to teeter right on the 37.50, right above the 37.50 price. And I'll tell you how I came up with that. So that's what we're looking at. Let's look at what's expected for today and move on to the vote. Again, voting will close here in a couple of minutes. Be sure to go to eclear.me/event-voting. This morning, expecting open auction out of range. There's a gap here to yesterday. Yesterday right here. Yesterday had a higher low, lower high, completely inside day, very compressed range. But the one-time framing, as you can see, is up on the daily. We've established one-time framing up by holding the low of Friday. So I'm expecting this thing to continue to try to push higher and move into that 37.80 area. And then I'm looking for it to find resistance in these 3 days of balance, find resistance, come back to the open, and very likely fill this gap and potentially finish under 37.50. You can't change your vote at this point. So that's what we're looking for today. On the secondary, it's an open that immediately responds, comes back to base at the gap, 37.50. So 50 down here, 37.50, pokes around 50.45. So, and then develops the coiling or the contraction it needs or the balance it needs to fuel a run higher. And then we're pushing to the overnight high, and then we're squeezing through the 37.80 to challenge 37.90 up here and potentially the 3800. The 3800, which is well within the day's range. If that happens, we would have a pretty exceptional day in that from yesterday's settle, we have exceeded the historical or quantitative bands that where we would expect the close to happen. So that's what's expected. Now let's talk about event voting. Again, I want to make sure that you are taking a moment to vote because it's going to close here in about 10 minutes. Please take a moment to vote. Vote your opinion on any of the products. The products are ESNQ, RTY, the crude oil, or the euro. Here's how you vote, and these are the prices we're voting on right here. Okay, so let me set up the voting screen, and we are going to put these positions on. 37.50,
dollar low,
11,250. Just setting up the platform right now. 17.75. Need to talk to someone at Rhythmic about this screen resetting and forcing me to set it up again. And then 98.99. Okay, please take a moment to vote. We're about to put the positions on. Here's the logic behind what I'm looking at, but first I'm going to put the positions on, and then so here are the results so far. The ES, most of you voted. It is not likely to close below the 37.50. The NQ, it is not likely to close below 11,250. RTY, it is not likely to close below 17.75. And crude oil, it is not likely to close above 85. And the 6C, it is not likely to close below 99. So you're voting basically what the votes are so far are what the votes are showing so far is that you're voting with with the trend that's already there. Here's my logic. This is a chart. This is a chart of the ES. The ES, let's zoom in. The ES has these closing bands. And what I do with this chart is look for, I'm using basically uh, the same logic as with options. The H vol, figuring out the H vol for a strike. And yesterday's settlements right there in the S&P 3689.25. The probability, there's one sigma. So the probability that the market, the historical probability that the market will close above above the 3756 or below the 3622 is very low. So there's a 70% probability, one sigma or one standard deviation, there's a 70% probability that it would close at 3756 or lower. Most of you voted that it's not likely to close below 3750. So we'll see how that goes. Unfortunately, because of the way the votes have gone, I can't put these positions on. My vote personally is for yes, that I will buy these for 7.25 to get 1275. That would be my vote. But because most of you voted that it would close above 3750, we would get less than a 1R return buying 13.25 and getting 675. And our rules say that if we don't have 1R, we can't put on that trade. For the NASDAQ, let's look at the NASDAQ. What is going on here? For the NASDAQ, where are you? For the NASDAQ, those numbers are, if there's a 70% probability, that historical probability that the NASDAQ will close below 11,337 and above 10,883. This is why I selected below 11,250. The expectation is it's not likely because the next strike up in the NASDAQ, if you look at the NASDAQ, the next strike up is 11,500. And so to me, it is very likely to close at where it is now or below 11,250 because they don't, I need to talk to someone at the CME about these strike prices. They're too far apart for the NASDAQ. For the Russell, you have settlement at 1742. The Russell has a historical probability of about 70% that it would close between 1779 and 1704. This is why the vote was for the Russell settling below 1775. So 1775 is just below that. And basically, I'm saying quantitatively, it's likely to close below. Most of you voted that's a no, so we cannot take that trade. It's $11.50 for an $8.50 return. I would more likely buy these 950s to get $10.50 back. So there's no trade there, unfortunately. I think we need to adjust the rules and maybe focus on just one or two products is the next iteration of this. And then crude, it has a 70% historical probability of closing between 87.09 and 81.97. 87.09. Most of you, so I put in above 85 because it is, although it's trending down, it is opening above prior settlement and is trading above prior settlement. So I expected that crude is likely to get dragged up a little bit. Most of you said no to above. If we look at where we are in crude, no to above is $3, and then yes to below 85, it's $17.75. So we can't put this trade on because it breaks the 1 hour rule. We're not going to pay $17.75 to get $2.25. And then finally, the 6E. The 60 is expected to finish between 99.7 and 98.1. And your vote is that it's very likely to finish below the 99, which I agree with. So this is the one to settle below the 99. So I agree with it. So this is the only one that we can put on. So we've got one trade on for $2. We bought for $2, looking for 18 profit, looking for this thing to close above, to close below 99. This is the only trade with an edge, and there's a pretty fat edge in there, in my opinion, this morning. We'll see how that works. I'll wrap up here. The voting is now closing, and we've put our positions on. Thank you all for participating. Let's see if we can make some money for charity today. If you want more information, go to itrade.events, itrade.events. This is where you get more information about event contract trading. In my opinion, there's a pretty decent edge in these, in that you trade them when the markets are really outside of the normal bands, like some of these products are this morning. I hope you gained something here today, and hopefully we make some money for charity, and thanks for voting. Take care.
Financials high. New high DAX. New high euro. New high euro. New high euro. Financials high. New high DAX. New high TECHs.